Welcome to the Hateful Hitman Podcast. Brought to you by Hitman Fantasy Productions. Premier football coverage from college to NFL to fantasy and everything in between. And now, in the Hitman's Hideout, here's your host, Chris Strasbaugh.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the Hateful Hitman Podcast. It's a Monday night. The sun is finally out in Ohio. The rain has seemed to moved on for a little bit. Probably the rainiest, wettest summer I can imagine in recent history. It's just been ridiculous. Hope you guys are doing good. Come to you tonight with a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. We've got real life football to be played starting here in just a few weeks. And this week kicks off the Cowboys reporting to training camp, Tampa Bay reporting to training camp, Pittsburgh reporting to training camp. Why is that? Well, because Dallas and Pittsburgh play in the Hall of Fame game in early August. So they have to report early so that they can get themselves in shape. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit some NFL news. And then we'll get into the meat of the show tonight, which is fantasy drafts and drafting style. I'm going to go through some of the strategies that I use in the different kinds of drafts that you have. But first, let's get to some news.
Here's what we know.
It is the last week of non-football until sometime in January when the Super Bowl is played. So that means that the Steelers, the Cowboys, and Tampa Bay, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why Tampa Bay is reporting now. I haven't heard, but it is that time. We are, the wait is over. The off season is over, and now it's time to kick things up a little bit. Two hot topics on the menu tonight is Richard Sherman and continuing saga that is Aaron Rodgers. Now, it seems to me, and it's in my humble, unprofessional podcasting opinion, that Aaron Rodgers will not be playing for the Green Bay Packers this year. That's the way that I feel. There are others that feel the same way that I do. There are others that feel that he will play for the Green Bay Packers. And to them, I say I think too much has happened. Too much has transpired. He doesn't want to be in Green Bay. He doesn't like the fact that they drafted Jordan Love. He's got a gigantic ego. And we've seen the last of him in a Green Bay jersey. Now, if in fact that changes, I will be the first one to admit that I was wrong and I didn't know what I was talking about. But at this point, sitting right here on July 19th, I don't see an NFL season this year where Aaron Rodgers is a Green Bay Packer. I also don't see an NFL season this year where Aaron Rodgers is another quarterback or a quarterback for another team. Green Bay's not going to trade him. He won't play for him. So we have a rock and a harder rock banging heads. So what happens? The only other option is retire and see what happens, in the future if they decide to trade him then or whatever. But if he has to stick to his guns, now I think so much has happened that he cannot and save any kind of face with his tremendous ego that he has, play for the Packers. Because if he shows up and plays for the Packers, then it's like, well, all he did was just blow a lot of smoke and ruffle some feathers, and that's that. Richard Sherman, talk about him just a little bit, and then we're going to get into the meat of the matter with the Cowboys and the Steelers starting training camp this week, preparing for the Hall of Fame game. Richard Sherman, at one time was not only probably the smartest player in the NFL, but also the most feared and revered corner at his position because he played so smart. He was so big and physical, and he played, several great years there with Seattle. And, he got, for whatever issue, he was drinking, and he got in somehow the law got called, and, he was saying he was threatening to kill himself or whatever. A lot of people do stupid stuff when they've been drinking. I've said it before on this podcast many, many times. There was a couple of players who, Thomas Davis, in recent history, I supported Thomas Davis, and I had his back when he tested positive for an illegal substance and he had to miss a couple of games. Accidents happen. Okay, I wasn't going to beat up on Thomas Davis or say that he was a terrible person just because of that one incident that he had a couple of years ago. This is the same thing with Richard Sherman. To me, this is just not really that big of a deal. Something happened. We've all had a few drinks, and we've all probably said some stuff that we probably shouldn't have said while we were drinking. Yeah, he's a superstar, and he's in the limelight, and it's magnified. But to me, as long as nothing happened and it was not a big gigantic deal, I don't know, and maybe I need to do a little bit more digging because I might be off. But I'm willing to let this one slide, and maybe he's got some personal things going on that he's wrestling with. We all do. And, he's blowing off some steam, and, who hasn't done that? But threatening to kill himself and all that, that's not cool. That, to me, that's a person, in a cry for help, and he needs some help. But as far as being, knocking on him or whatever, I'm not going to be that guy. Never been a gigantic Richard Sherman fan. Never really been on his bandwagon. But at the same time, he is a human being, and we all got stuff going on. Moving on. Football's back. Dallas Cowboys, Pittsburgh Steelers kick things off with the Hall of Fame game August the 6th, which is a Thursday night, if I remember correctly. It is Thursday. It is August the 5th. I did have the date wrong. Thursday, August 5th, and Canton, Ohio. It is my beloved Cowboys versus the hated Pittsburgh Steelers, one of America's oldest rivalries with two of the premier elite programs throughout NFL history. And, we're not going to see Dak Prescott. We're not going to see Ben Roethlisberger. Okay? And we all need to know that, and we also all need to be okay with it because football's back in a non-COVID year, and we should be getting back to some semblance of order. I'm okay with not seeing Dak Prescott. I'm okay with not seeing Ben Roethlisberger. I'm okay with not seeing really any of the superstars that are on this team. You're not going to see Devin Bush. You're probably not going to see Jalen Smith. And they don't need to play in that game. Okay? This is just a token game to kick us off and to let us know that football's back, and it's just to become a tradition that that the Hall of Fame game signifies preseason. So what are we going to see? We're going to see players fighting right out of the gate. 5th, 6th, 7th round players, undrafted free agents, playing for a roster spot and to make their name known right out the gate. Week 1 of the NFL season, or week 0, depending on how you look at it, probably week 0, right out of the gate, trying to make a name for themselves and make one of these NFL teams. And if they don't make the Cowboys or the Steelers roster, make a name to where they make some noise, and they may they have a need for players elsewhere. Is the preseason boring? Oh, yes, it absolutely is. But it also signifies that we're getting close to the actual kickoff, to when football matters and when our fantasy teams ramp up. And with that, I can just segue right into tonight's main meat topic, and I want to talk to you about fantasy drafts. I don't know that I've ever done this before as far as strategy and in depth, giving you an idea of the behind the scenes of what the Hateful Hitman does when he drafts teams. But I'm going to give you a little brief preview and a little breakdown of every format. But before we get into that, I want to apologize if you hear a fan in the background, if you hear cars going by. It is hot as crap in the hideout tonight, and I have the windows open and the fans on. So if you hear that in the background, the humming or whatever, I apologize, but it's just too hot to not have it going. I want to start with orphan teams. And this is something I was thinking about earlier today. I want to talk to you a little bit about inheriting or taking over an orphan team. Now, it happens every year. Leagues lose people. People decide to quit. People decide to drop out, or they get booted because they're just not very good owners or whatever, and that team becomes an orphan. Now, this is only in redraft, or this is only in dynasty, keeper, things like that. This is not in a redraft league, obviously, because there is no such thing as an orphan team in redraft. So I'm talking about dynasty. I'm talking about keeper leagues, and I want to. It's a fantastic idea if you take over an orphan team, but you need to go into that first year saying, I inherited somebody else's crap, and this year I'm just trying to build for the next year. Case in point, we had our college to Canton league draft a couple of weeks ago, and then a week or so ago, we had the college portion on Fantrax. Right at the time, one of the owners was set to pick in the first round. For personal reasons, he had to leave the league. And he's literally on the clock. I was frustrated a little bit, sure, but I also understand that people have things. We all have stuff going on. I spoke about it earlier with Richard Sherman. We all have stuff away from fantasy football. Fantasy football is not life. Fantasy football is fun. It's entertainment. It's a game. It's not do or die. I understood his situation. Could he have let me know a couple days ahead of time? Most likely. But I wasn't going to bust his balls for that. But it put me in a spot. So I had to reach out. I had a guy. He's in several of our leagues. He's a 3-time champion in the Chumps League. And he said that if a spot ever opened, he would be interested in filling it. So I contacted him first. And he said, yes, I want it. I said, well, before you take it, you need to know what you're up against. I said his NFL portion, his NFL roster is not that terrible. His college dynasty is not that great. So you're inheriting this orphan team, and you are taking over what is right there in front of you. He said, I don't care. I'll build it up. I said, okay, great. And I know that he will. I know that he'll put the time in and he'll put the research in because, like I said, he's a 3-time champion in our friend Brian Wickham's league, 1 champ, 9 chumps. He's won it 3 years in a row. He's looking for the 4-peat this year. So he'll take it. He'll do a good job. But what he inherited was a very weak college portion of his roster. So he had to, luckily, he had all of his picks. We had 10-round draft. He had all of his picks to make that whole entire draft his own. So I say all of that to say this. If you inherit and you decide to take over an orphan team, good for you, but you have to understand that you're probably not going to succeed in year one. You're going to start right then building that team for the next year or the year after that. So before you inherit or decide to take over an orphan team, do some research. Having somebody send you what you're inheriting. Take a look and say, yeah, I can work with this, or no, I can't. But just be prepared to play the long game and say, yeah, I'm just going to have to take my lumps this year, and I'll do better next year. Moving on. Keeper leagues. To me, a keeper league is where you can keep any number of players between 1 and probably 10. After that, to me, it becomes kind of a dynasty, and you kind of look at it as maybe a dynasty. And you know what? Maybe on second thought, it's between 1 and 5 is a keeper league, and after that, you're looking at a mini dynasty, kind of a hybrid dynasty keeper. They had an affair, and that's what they spit out.